Please remain standing for the National Anthem. Please be seated. Good morning, and welcome to Merrill High School's Veterans Day Commemoration and Assembly. Please welcome to our distinguished guests and visitors from various veteran organizations and their auxiliaries, which may include the AMVETS, members of the American Legion, members of the Veterans of Foreign Wars, and all other veterans and their auxiliary organizations. Also, please give welcome to our members of the Board of Education present and Merrill Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Sandstorm. A special thank you to Mr. Duran and his staff in giving us this valuable time to honor our Day of the Veterans. Thank you to Veterans Day Committee, Ms. Rathjen, Mr. Bjorklund, Ms. Finnell, Mr. Scholt, Mr. Van Lieshout, and Mr. Tice. Thank you to Mrs. Brunette and the MP3 staff. And additionally, thank you to the Student Council for their special assistance here in honoring the veterans. A special thank you to Merrill's Symphonic Band under the direction of Diane McCauley, and of course Merrill's Vocal Jays under the direction of Jim Bjorklund. So please give a round of applause to all those who helped. At this time, I would like to introduce Petty Officer Joshua Beam. Serves for over 9 years in the United States Navy. He was with the Operation Enduring Freedom on the USS Carl Vinson. Please welcome him, and he will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
If I could please have you guys stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
At this time, if we can silently have a moment of silence, commemorating all veterans who served the United States of America for the ideals of enduring freedom and of our democracy. Thank you. It is a great and indeed pleasure to have among us a distinguished guest today. His name is Major Scott Johnson of the Wisconsin Air National Guard 115th Fighter Wing. Major Johnson has served our country for well over 20 and a half years. He just returned from serving a number of months serving in the United States forces in Iraqi freedom. Today, he will commemorate our veteran and our active veterans serving overseas at this time and all over this world of ours. Every major part of this world, we are being served under the sea, on the sea, in the air. And at this time, if you could just listen and pay attention for the next 15-20 minutes of Major Johnson and his presentation commemorating the United States veteran. Thank you.
Good morning. Mr. Hoffman, thank you for this invitation to speak with you. Teachers, students, members of the public, thank you for joining me today as we recognize veterans for their unwavering service to this nation. Across our great country and throughout the world, it is my hope that Americans will pause today to honor our brave fighting men and women who, for more than 200 years, have underwritten our freedom by their duty, honor, and selfless service. Veterans Day is a time to recognize those Americans who gave what President Abraham Lincoln once called the last full measure of devotion. While we reflect on the deeds of these heroes and stand grateful for their service and sacrifice, we should also ponder the ongoing actions of our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines. Ours is a great nation of free people who call our finest men and women to stand guard and protect the liberty that all Americans enjoy. To this end, all who have donned the uniform of our armed forces have consciously given a piece of themselves, whether during peacetime or time of conflict, at home or abroad, in the active component, reserves, or the National Guard. Their service has been characterized by selflessness and a sense of greater purpose. Throughout our history, they have answered the call, whether that call to service sent them to a distant land full of turmoil or to the flight line at Grand Forks Air Force Base, North Dakota, which I know something about in the middle of the winter. They have served with dignity and honor. Our veterans have paid with their courage and honor. They have defended America through both the best and worst of times. They have performed their difficult duties tirelessly, with little recognition or fanfare. They have sought neither fortune nor fame. A simple love of country and liberty compelled them to serve this great nation of ours. We salute our veterans now for this selfless service and recognize that their devotion to duty makes them a source of inspiration to emulate. They are our heroes because they have repeatedly triumphed over adversity. They know what it's like to stand guard in the chill of night while others sleep. They understand the meaning of hardship, standing watch at freedom's frontier far from loved ones. As these men and women have sacrificed, so too have a far less recognized segment of our veterans' population, their spouses. For each displaced serviceman, there's often a husband or wife left behind. These silent patriots have kissed their loved ones goodbye and sent them off to serve their country. They diligently run through their households while their mates serve here locally or on a foreign base halfway around the globe. They often have put their career on hold and patiently sacrifice portions of their lives while their significant other is away. Additionally, it is important to recognize that for many veterans in the Reserve and National Guard, there is an employer and employees that support that reservist or that guardman's deployment. Whatever accolades we bestow on our veterans, we must also remember the parallel sacrifice of their heroic spouses as well as their employers or co-workers. Today, our troops are answering the call to duty in locations around the world. The war on terrorism is being waged by America's finest, from Iraq to Afghanistan to the Philippines. Our troops in South Korea continue to keep watch on the communist regime to their north. Reservists and National Guardsmen continue to serve at the expense of their civilian vocations on extended active duty for a year or more. Some of our military patriots continue to serve well beyond the date that they were to leave service because the nation continues to need their expertise. We must also thank those who uphold the legacy of the veterans. Our troops still serving their country at home or abroad. For we have learned from the past that our military needs our support. Korea and Vietnam have taught us a lesson. After Korea, our veterans returned home to a country that appeared indifferent to their service. After Vietnam, our military faced scorn from some circles. Scorn and indifference have no place in our heroes' homecoming. Instead, we must show them our gratitude by welcoming all our heroes when they return home. Now, with the global war on terrorism, our troops confront an enemy with the same vigor our veterans have always displayed. The horror of 9/11 demonstrated to many that we cannot take our past peace and prosperity for granted, but our veterans already knew this. They know our nation was not founded on the guarantees of the past, but the promise of the future. They know that freedom isn't free, and our eternal vigilance is the price we must always pay for liberty. We must now resolve to keep faith with our veterans and our military as this nation fights and wins the global war on terrorism. To all our veterans here today, I have a simple, heartfelt message. Thank you, all of you, for your service. We want you to know that your example serves to inspire others to follow in your footsteps. Thank you for your selfless service in peacetime and in war, here in this nation and throughout the world, for all veterans, regardless of their service and the era in which they have served, have paid a price for the freedom we enjoy. When speaking with Mr. Huffman today about the event, we agreed that it might be of interest to discuss, from my perspective, our involvement in Operation Enduring and Iraqi Freedom. Next slide, please. Operation Enduring Freedom. For the past over 2 years, since September 11th, 2001, I've been activated 3 times. I was activated in the fall of 2001 to serve on a crisis action team in Washington, D.C., getting people ready to move forward. My second deployment after I came home in January of 2003, I was activated in February of 2003 for Operation Enduring Freedom. Next slide, please. I was sent to a very far distant land, one that I had only had an occasion to hear of once or twice. The nation is called Kyrgyzstan. It's a bordering nation to Afghanistan. My job and the job of others that were with me was to help build the 376th Aerospace Expeditionary Wing, and we did so. Next slide, please. We were in the former Soviet Union. We were the first active military unit to serve in the former Soviet Union on active service. My location was outside the capital of Kyrgyzstan. Bishkek is the name of the capital. Next slide, please. The base that I was at was named after Peter J. Gansey, Jr. He was the fire chief for the New York City Fire Department. He lost his life in the South Tower of the World Trade Center on September 11th. The person who wrote this message on this very first piece of ordnance to leave our base was our base commander, General Charles Lloyd. And his message was simple. This one is for Peter J. Gansey, Jr. Next slide, please. This is the base we built. We housed approximately 3,000 troops from 8 coalition nations. It was quite simply one of the most awesome undertakings I've ever had a chance to be associated with. Next slide, please. This is where people live. They're housed in something called a temper tent. And temper refers to climate, but I say it refers to personality. You put 10 or 12 people in here, and you have to know how to get along with others for extended periods of time. Next slide, please. This is a representation in the lower left-hand corner of a native shelter. It's called a yurta. It's similar to a Native American teepee here. It's nomadic tribesmen live in them throughout the country. The other pictures depict scenes at our base. Next slide, please. Of course, one slide that we just went past here had to do with personal hygiene, and we were trying out several different types of shelters to do that, and this is another depiction of a part of the squadron I commanded. That is where everybody took their meals. It's a 15,000 square foot dining facility. Next slide. And again, we were trying out different facilities. This is a shower facility in the field. Next slide. This is our operations area. Next slide. And this is a ramp, an aircraft ramp full of coalition aircraft of different types. Next slide. By 8 coalition nations first, we had the Spanish arrive in February of 2002. Next slide. We also had the French serving with us in Operation Enduring Freedom. I can't say enough good about the French. They were there with us, working side by side in our cause, and as a matter of fact, my squadron deputy was a French captain. Next slide, please. We had the Denmark with us flying C-130. Next slide. The Norwegians were with us as well. Next slide. Netherlands. Next slide. And finally, our own Marine aircraft arrived. We were operating a base. The United States Air Force operated a coalition base without any of our own aircraft on the ramp. Finally, when the Marines arrived, we knew we were fully engaged in the fight. Next slide, please. Additionally, we had South Koreans with us. They were our medical folks, and they were a little more willing than our own folks to try different types of treatments for ailments, including acupuncture. Next slide. This is a picture of a coalition commanding unit. And as you can see, we have a French colonel who was our vice wing commander. The gentleman in the center is a liaison officer from the Kyrgyz military. He spoke perfect English. He had been educated at several installations in the United States. Another amazing thing about Major Cosmos is that he was doing his job for free. He had not been paid in 6 months when I arrived there. The gentleman to his left is my commander, Colonel Wagner. Gentleman to his left is an Australian group captain who is also another vice wing commander. Next slide. And this was our commander. This was my first Memorial Day ceremony celebrated during Operation Enduring Freedom. Next slide. We had a lot of visitors while I was there. Amazing to me is we had a curious local population, a lot of veterans. What you see depicted to the right is a gentleman with a Soviet-era uniform on. The Soviets are known to be long on medals, short on pay, and they are very proud of their service. And this gentleman had served in what they call the Great Patriotic War. We know it as World War II. Next slide, please. We also did have entertainment. While you're out in the field, one of my jobs is to accept the gift of entertainment from the United Service Organization or other organizations and attempt to put on a show to relieve some of the stress in the field for our troops. Next slide. Additionally, we had highly distinguished visitors with us. It takes a lot of preparation when the Secretary of Defense comes to visit your Bear Base, so it was my job to ensure that everything went smoothly for his visit. Next slide. And he did have a chance to spend some time talking with me. He's a very affable man. He was very tired by the time he got there, but was very interested in what was happening at our base. Next slide. And there we are getting ready to leave. Most people come in and go out of, at least for the Air Force and the Army, through Germany. And there we are at our departure. Next slide. On to Operation Iraqi Freedom. I was relieved of active duty the fall of 2002, and I thought I had spent my time in service, and to my surprise, I was called and informed last January that I would indeed be activated again. At that time, we did not know the operation was Iraqi Freedom. Next slide. When I was first notified, I was told that I would be going to Turkey. Well, we didn't go to Turkey, so I was redirected to the United Arab Emirates. Next slide, please. The location where I was at is close to about 30 kilometers from the city of Dubai. Next slide. That was our job. As you can see, we were off hunting Iraqis. Next slide. Our mission was to support flying operations 24 hours a day and primarily with C-130 aircraft. Next slide. And here we are getting ready to do an offload. This is a C-5. It's our largest cargo military transport in the United States military. Next slide. Here's what it looked like when we got there. Next slide. Here's the beginnings of our base. Next slide. These are pilots. pilots don't normally put up their own shelter, but in order to get a place to sleep here, you needed to put up your own tent. So they had to go to work. Next slide. Next slide. These are simply scenes depicting the growth of the base as it was built. This base no longer exists. Next slide. You had to have a sense of humor when you were out there. We tried to use several different types of shelter to keep to house our troops. As you can see, the shelter to the left, that shelter would house up to 30 people, and it was crowded and hot. And what they've said is, welcome to Sprungville, you're not in Kansas anymore. Next slide. And again, we had signs of all types. Sometimes television shows help you with familiarity, and you can see that that's a sign similar to the one they have on MASH, people putting up how far they are from home. The sign on the right is a for sale sign for one of their tents. We had an air crew leaving a tent. In fact, they did sell it to another group of 12 people coming in. Next slide. This is a picture of an inbound Sandstorm as I was walking away from it. And sandstorms were frequent during our first few months there. It hampered life. It made life miserable. Next slide. We had the only rain that they had had in this country in 4.5 years, and it turned out to be a flash flood. So we not only were dealing with sandstorms, extreme heat, but then we had a flood. That's a picture of the inside of my temper tent, and everybody trying to get the water out of it so they could go to sleep. Next slide. This is a picture of my squadron and the only hard facility we built on the base, and that was our dining facility. Next slide. This, you can keep clicking forward. These are simply pictures of my command unit. Next slide. And you can continue to click forward. Picture of night operations and continuing to work on our new facility. Next slide. Again, this is my second Memorial Day commemorating in this area of operation. The gentleman on the right laying a wreath is a general in the United Arab Emirates Army. Next slide. At the time this picture was taken, this was a slide of all of the individuals who had lost their lives in this conflict. And that was as of July 2003. Next slide. We did have a chance to interact with our coalition partners while we were in the United Arab Emirates. This is a group of New Zealanders, Canadians, the British, also the Danish, and all coming for a 4th of July cookout. Next slide. This is a little Sandstorm recreation. As you can see, they're playing cards. Next slide. This is a picture of our Vice Wing Commander and Command Chief Master Sergeant. The Command Chief Master Sergeant's other occupation is a captain in the Peoria Police Force. We all, at our base, generally had other occupations, and that makes for some lively conversation and a well-functioning unit. This is on the ramp at Baghdad International Airport. Next slide. These are a few pictures of scenes around Baghdad. Next slide. A flag folding ceremony on the ramp at Baghdad International. Next slide. For those of you who know the cable television show Monster Garage, as you can see, maybe you can't see, we had some folks coming through, I believe with some Army troops, painted Monster Garage on the side of this old MiG-21 that had been bombed. Next slide. Patriot missile battery outside the airport. Next slide. Picture of our good friend Saddam, or our depiction of our good friend Saddam. Next slide. The children were simply outstanding, and throughout the Middle East, we found the children were just the greatest. Next slide. This is a 4th of July commemoration ceremony. Next slide. One of our friends They were everywhere, just like cows are here. Next slide. So somebody looking for a ride home, an Air Force Staff Sergeant looking to go to Florida. Next slide. This is a desert sunset. Last slide. Some conclusions. Please thank your veterans today for what they've done to support and defend the freedoms we enjoy. Your defense forces are simply outstanding. A lot is being required of a few people, and the reserve forces are being used quite a bit. Thank you. I appreciate your attention.
Again, thanks. Let's give a round of applause to Major Johnson and his wife, Mrs. Johnson, who's been enduring on the home front as well. Thank you. At this time, it's always my great pleasure to commemorate the recognition of active reserve and Guard members and veterans who walk our halls every day. In other words, some of our teachers and staff, custodial staff, and others that have served in the military and who can truly be called veterans. So at this time, I'd just like to place honor to all of these gentlemen. I will announce them. Please let me announce them. John Hagemeister, presently serving the United States Army National Guard, active. Jeff McDonald, United States Air Force. John Van Lieshout, United States Marine Corps. Al Schult, United States Air Force, retired. Kenny Raditz, United States Army National Guard, and myself, United States Navy and United States National Guard. So please give them a round of applause. If you see any of these gentlemen, please thank them today, sometime in the hallway. At this time as well, I would like to place honor and recognition to our Merrill High School military enlistees, who will be leaving in the next few months after they graduate from high school. They'll be leaving for basic training in their respective services that they've joined. So please, during the day as well, please honor and thank them as well. They're willing to raise the right hand and to enlist into the United States Armed Forces. So at this time, if I could recognize the following members. Tim Anderson, United States Army National Guard. Dwayne Gavitt, United States Navy. Anthony Leary, United States Army National Guard. Ryan Jopek, United States Army National Guard. Dan Newman, United States Army National Guard. Nicole Nowak, United States Air Force. Steve Plautz, United States Navy. Dan Sauter, United States Army National Guard. Ray Sauter, United States Army National Guard. And Liz Ward, United States Army. Please give them a round of applause. At this time, it is my great pleasure to have Mr. McDonald come forward and read a letter from Vietnam.
Good morning. I would like to read a letter from Dear America, Letters Home from Vietnam. This is a letter from a mother to her son after his death in Vietnam. Dear Bill, today is February 13th, 1984. I came to this black wall again to see and touch your name. And as I do, I wonder if anyone ever stops to realize that next to your name, on this black wall, is your mother's heart. A heart broken 15 years ago today, when you lost your life in Vietnam. And as I look at your name, William R. Stocks, I think of how many, many times I used to wonder how scared and homesick you must have been in that strange country called Vietnam. And if and how it might have changed you for you were the most happy-go-lucky kid in the world, hardly ever sad or unhappy. And until the day I die, I will see you as you laughed at me, even when I was very mad at you, and the next thing I knew, we were laughing together. But on this past New Year's Day, I had my answer. I talked by phone to a friend of yours from Michigan who spent your last Christmas and the last 4 months of your life with you. Jim told me how you died, for he was there and saw the helicopter crash. He told me how you had flown your quota and had not been scheduled to fly that day, how the regular pilot was unable to fly and had been replaced by someone with less experience, how they did not know the exact cause of the crash, how it was either hit by enemy fire or they hit a pole or something unknown, how the blades went through the chopper and hit you, how you lived about a half an hour but were unconscious and therefore did not suffer. He said how your jobs were like sitting ducks. They would send you men in to draw the enemy out into the open, and then they would send in the big guns and planes to take over. Meanwhile, death came to so many of you. He told me how after a little while over there, instead of a yellow streak, the men got a mean streak down their backs. Each day the streak got bigger, and the men got meaner. Everyone but you, Bill. He said how you stayed in the same happy-go-lucky guy that you were when you arrived in Vietnam, how your warmth and friendliness drew the guys to you, how your lieutenant gave you the nickname of Spanky, and soon your group, Jim included, were all called Spanky's Gang. How when you died, it made it so much harder on them, for you were their moral support. He said how of all people, you should never have been the one to die. Oh God, how it hurts to write this, but I must face it and then put it to rest. I know that after Jim talked to me, he must have relived it all over again and suffered so. Before I hung up the phone, I told Jim that I loved him for being your close friend and for being the last days and for sharing the last days of your life with you and for being there when you died. How lucky you were to have him for a friend and how lucky he was to have had you. They tell me the letters that I write to you and leave here at this memorial are waking others up to the fact that there is still so much pain left after all these years from the Vietnam War. But this I know, I would rather have had you for 21 years and all the pain that goes with losing you than never to have had you at all. Mom.
At this time, we're going to be having taps and retiring of the colors. As that happens, after the colors are retired, please leave silently.